eBay Motors and Fox Racing welcome you to episode 56 of The Lowdown Show. I'm Neil Graham. In this episode, I speak to Ina Thorn and Bryce Stevens from the BDR, the Backcountry Discovery Routes, a centralized, organized, registered nonprofit that provides routes through some of the most visceral, breathtaking country in the U.S. The BDR may just be the best thing that's happened to adventure riding since the advent of motorcycles that can't fall over. But before we take a leap, a word from those who make the lowdown possible. Picture this: you're halfway through a DIY motorcycle fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. Well, it's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything. Brake rotors, lights, and tire exhaust systems, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. You know, for 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger Defend and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design, with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam-sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing, and D30 CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing. What is the BDR? Who wants to start us off?
I'll do it.
Yeah.
So Backcountry Discovery Routes, or BDR, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're funded by the motorcycle community, and we're powered by our volunteers. And our mission is threefold. We create epic off-road motorcycle experiences for adventure and dual sport community. We promote rider education, safety, and stewardship in the backcountry. And then finally, we drive sustainable economic impact to rural communities along our routes. Backcountry Discovery Routes is 15 years old. We're celebrating our 15-year anniversary. And over those years, we have created 20 BDR routes. Between 14 main BDR routes and 6 BDR X routes, we have over 20,000 miles of free GPS tracks for the adventure community.
Well, there we go. Now we kind of have an idea of what it is. Now, I mean, a few things that I found sort of interesting. Your website is remarkably detailed, which is really appealing to someone like me. But the one thing that always happens when you say off-road, the word off-road, words, I guess it's two words, isn't it? The words off-road can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So Bryce, if I'm going to head out on a BDR route, how do I know? Is it single track? Is it clinging to the side of a mountain? Is it just sort of a fire road that I could do on a 1300 GS 2-up, or how do I determine what suits my skill set as a rider?
Well, we've tried to keep them relatively consistent. BDRs are designed to be moderate level routes, and all the roads we use are public. So you don't have any issues with, angry landowners or those kinds of things. We vet all the roads and all the routes before we release them to the public. And we don't use any trails, and that includes ATV trails. So you're always going to be riding a road. It could be double track, and it could still be very challenging at times. And then obviously we have a lot of pavement. Every route has pavement because you've got pavement connecting dirt roads, between different areas. So the mix of pavement to dirt varies, and even the difficulty varies somewhat. We've tried to kind of organize which ones are a little bit easier, and I'm talking about like an entire BDR compared to another entire BDR, which one's a little bit easier, which one's a little bit harder, and which ones are kind of in the middle. We tried to do that, but again, we try to be consistent. When we're designing these, we're out riding, we think of a moderate level rider, so experienced but not, super advanced, on a very large machine. So one of the largest bikes, like a GS 1200, fully loaded, maybe even overloaded with camping gear. Let's say that they're not that experienced in camping.
You've seen me in action, obviously.
Right. And so that's what we designed for. The moderate level rider, big bike, fully loaded.
Right. Now, what was the impetus for this? Because it seems like I mean, trying to organize these sorts of things and getting people to be their best selves when they're riding through public lands. And of course, all it takes is one bad egg to screw it up for everybody else. But what was the impetus that started this? And Bryce, you were involved right from the get-go, were you not?
Yes. Yeah. I'm one of the original founders. I made the original route. There was a route in Oregon that was made a long time ago, and I had heard about it, and I'd even seen a video out there on the interweb at the time, and was inspired by that. And I thought, gosh, if Oregon's got a route, Washington should have one. And I know Washington really well, so why don't I make a route? So, and I had just purchased a KTM 990 Adventure at the time. I was super eager to get out and ride and explore, and I'm kind of a naturally just kind of make routes and tours, and it's just in my mind that way. So I made one for Washington, got with my friend Andrew Cull, and I said, hey, what can we do with this? What can we do? And we thought, okay, well, we could share it on ADV Rider. Honestly, that was our first thought. And then we thought, well, there's this event going on down in Arizona called the Overland Expo, and they have this thing called the flag competition, and we thought we could present this for that and try and win this flag and a little bit of a sponsorship, and maybe we could take this further. And it actually worked. We explained it to them, and we wound up winning. They didn't give us much money, but what they did is give us some something behind us to kind of push us along and a reason to do it. So we took their flag, and we wound up meeting Sterling Noreen, who makes motorcycle films. We met with the Tour Tech guys who said, we can pay Sterling to make a film for you. And then that kind of triangle came together, and we went out and filmed the Washington BDR. And then it was done. We launched it. We were like, what do we do next? Well, let's make more. And so that's how it started.
You seem to be, it seems to be the ideal thing at the ideal moment, because as you know, this whole notion of overlanding is a thing, for better or worse. And so your timing on this seems to be remarkable. And looking at your website and the number of companies and individuals that have stepped up to support it would make that fairly obvious. But the one thing that I found really odd and I didn't realize this until I was reviewing your website is that and maybe one of you can discuss this, but your routes, I would have thought that it would be like a Trans-America Trail. When the routes go north or south to north in each respective state. And that seems odd to me. Now, can you explain the rationale? I'm sure there's a rationale behind it. Can someone explain that to me?
Well, I can touch on it somewhat. I mean, again, the Oregon one was kind of that same thing that inspired me to go north to south. It's a cross state thing. And that just clicked with me. That makes sense. Okay. This is a great way to see a state, is to go across it, right? It could be east, west, it could be north, south. If you look at the United States, where I figured we'd be working, and Washington started this way, basically the public corridors tend to follow mountain ranges, which run north-south. It's hard to go east-west in a lot of states because you run into private lands, and once you get outside of these national forests or other public corridors, could be BLM land, you run into a lot of difficult places to go, and they may not be as interesting too. So my idea with Washington was to go across, get in and out of the forest, kind of be in the trees and ride forest roads, then kind of get out onto some of the mountains that are treeless and a little bit further, in this case, in eastern Washington or central Washington. And so that was it, and the other concept, thinking about it later, is that crossing latitude lines is a lot more exciting than crossing longitude lines, right?
Really that's such a nerdy thing to say.
Isn't it nerdy?
It is one of the nerdiest things I've heard. But anyway, carry on.
If you read the book Guns, Germs, and Steel, that's one of the concepts in the book, is that people tribes back in the day, or cavemen, they traveled across latitude lines because they were going along longitude lines, I guess, or no, they're going along latitude lines, and that was because they know the flora and fauna along those, right?
Right. Yeah.
A little bit more nerdy. But as we travel, let's say you're crossing all of California. That's a very, very long state. Think about all the different zones that you go through as you're traveling north through California. that state explains it a little bit better what I'm talking about. Southern California is very different from Northern California.
Of course, yeah. Most of the routes so far are the western states and some eastern states, and there's a whole block of gray in the middle, the flyover states as we call them, that have nothing in it. So, do you plan to expand? Will you eventually? Do you hope to meet in the middle?
We do. You could say that we did the easiest things first, right? The West Coast and the Rockies are pretty easy. Lots of public land, lots of roads to choose from. If you're a route maker like me, you just salivate when you look at, almost anywhere on the map in the Rockies and in the West Coast. I would have loved to have done some of the Midwest and central parts of the country sooner. It just didn't work out. We just didn't come across the right people. We work with locals. I can't make every route, and the other people that are on my route team, we can't do it. We bring in local experts from all of these areas, and it just seems that we didn't come across the right people earlier on for the Midwest. And now it's starting to click. I am being connected with a lot of these people, and I'm telling you, they know their states really well, and they're putting together great routes. I'm super excited about filling in that gray area that you're talking about. But we did the easy stuff, and then also the populated stuff, right? The East Coast with the population, it made sense to hit the Mid-Atlantic pretty soon, and then the rest of it's all come together. And those three routes are three of our most popular routes: the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, and now the Southeast that we just released.
The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. Talk to me a bit more about some of these routes.
So Bryce has a list of over 40 routes currently in development. I think it'll probably cover 20 years of BDR routes in the future, but he's really pushing us to produce more routes a year, where in the past, up until a few years ago, we were only able to produce one big BDR route a year, which is our cross-state route. And then we introduced the concept of BDR X routes, which are shorter BDR style loops that are logistically easier for people, and they don't have to, take 2 weeks from work to ride a BDR. They can just do it in the weekend. So now with the introduction of BDR X's, we were producing one BDR route and one BDR X route a year. And so now our board has really committed to producing more routes a year so that we can fulfill Bryce's dream of filling out the country with BDR routes. So now BDR is in this stage of growth, and in the next 5 years, we're committed to producing, to doubling the number of routes that we have in the BDR system. So where now we have 20 routes in 5 years, granted we have the support of the industry and our riders who are supporting the nonprofit, we will be able to double the number of routes. So, 40 routes in the next 5 years. So that's our big plan for expansion, considering everything falls in place.
Yeah, of course. It always has to fall in place. But I was really fascinated by one aspect on your website, which talked about the. Everybody claims that whatever they do in life has an economic benefit, except for my motorcycle racing, which of course drains all my money. But aside from that, but you guys have actually had a study done to oversee, especially in local rural communities, many of which are struggling. So could you talk to that notion a bit as well?
Yeah, we have actually, we've done 2 economic studies, one in 2017, and then we followed it up 5 years later in 2021. We worked with the University of Washington Center for Economic Development, and they did a study for us. At that time, we had, I think, 12 routes, and it was a survey done with our constituents. And what they found is that in just 1 year, over all the current BDR routes, BDR riders created $60 million in economic revenue to these small towns and communities along the routes. So it's, a lot of these rural communities we go through, they have lost mining economy, schools are closing, businesses are closing, and all of a sudden there's an opportunity for our riders to come in We estimate anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 riders that travel along each route every year. So these riders come in, they spend money on lodging, food, gas, camping. And so all of that creates a huge economic impact. So at that time, over all these routes, and we actually have data that that shows, specific what specific states bring in income from BDR riders. So 60 million over 12 routes.
That's amazing, and it seems to address the whole notion of the BDR problem, as I see it. I could be wrong, but if I'm living in the East, which I do, and if I want to go, to Utah or something, it's really hard to have. I mean, you want good information, and if you're flying out there and you're taking 2 or 3 weeks holiday, and you're going to another part of the country, often you're sort of left like, well, so-and-so says that if you go here and take that road, but it's not really enough to build a vacation or build a journey out of. But it seems that the hyper organization of the BDR, all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, I'd like to do that. And it seems far more palatable than it did before I came across you. Was that sort of the idea?
Yeah, I can say, we wanted these to be completely turnkey. That's the value we provide. Is making a route. We're not the only ones that can make routes. Many people can do this, but it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of know-how, both of where you'll be riding and mapping software and all these other things. So yeah, we just wanted, here, silver platter, take it, go ride. Super simple. We tell you where services and gas stations are along the way. We tell you all the mileages so you can kind of gauge, okay, we typically ride 100, 125 miles a day, or maybe it's 150. Faster riders do 200 miles in a day. Where am I going to wind up? Oh, here's where I'm going to be. Now I need to get my accommodations, or am I going to camp? Where are the campgrounds? We provide those. So that was our intent all along, be comprehensive in our route offering. That's where we're getting to now, but also comprehensive within each route, so that you have all you need for the most part. There's still, we leave some up to you to discover while you're riding and while you're planning, but we give you a lot.
So you've left something for me to discover, I assume. Not everything's there, but there is there's kind of a paradox about it, I think, and maybe you agree with me, but there's so much information, and it's so dense, mm-hmm. and yet you're doing it to get away from everything. There's kind of a duality there, isn't there? There's so much information, but I guess the more information there is, and I guess as a public entity, you have to be cognizant of, you can't send people off into the wilds unprepared, can you? Or encourage them to go unprepared.
True, but I don't think I've ever heard anybody finish a BDR and say, "Oh my God, they gave us too much information." That's just never happened. The adventure is always going to be an adventure. We could even double the amount of information that we provide within these things, and put it in a chip and put it in your brain. It's still an adventure no matter what you do, and things come up. You find things, the people you meet, the chaos that happens, along the way. It could be mechanical, it could be somebody having an accident, it could be somebody getting sick, or just getting, changing mind. Maybe you bring somebody on your trip that said they were prepared and they're not up to the level you thought. It's about the team, it's about the camaraderie, it's about the adventure. I don't think anybody will ever say that we made it too easy or anything like that.
You alluded to something there that's kind of funny, is that whenever I talk to people who run riding schools, it could be on-road, off-road, it could be a tour operator, it could be a school to work on your skills. But a universal thing is that men, particularly, Bryce, you and I, we overestimate our skills. Women don't seem to do this because, of course, they're smarter than we are. But guys are always, some men will consider themselves good off-roaders, but they rode a YZ80 when they were 9 and haven't been off-road since. So you have to take that into account with these routes. But are they And I know there's some middle-aged guys out there who maybe, haven't done a lot of off-roading, but is it really something that they can do?
Ina, why don't you answer this one, being the girl that rides with a lot of guys that have different levels?
Yeah, it depends. I would say that a lot of people underestimate the difficulty of these routes. Some are easier than others, but in general, people think that if they rode dirt bikes when they were young and had some on the pavement experience, that they could just jump on an adventure bike loaded fully with all of their camping gear and have no problem traversing 1,000 miles off-road on public lands, and that's just not the case. So we always say that you have to be as prepared as possible. We do recommend, no matter what you think your skill level is you take an off-road riding course, that you after you've done that you pack your bike loaded with all your gear, and you go and do a trial ride, a couple nights camping off your bike, and just see how differently the bike handles when it's fully loaded. And then that you're prepared to fix the tires, that if you get in the accident and you're out there without service, how are you going to get help? So we try to prepare people for that. Some read our advice and adhere to it, and some don't. So there's definitely a lot of adventures and misadventures on the BDRs, but that's really part of the fun. But in general, I would say the more prepared you are, the more fun you will have, and the more safe you will be in the backcountry.
Agreed. And it's a good excuse to spend some money on some nice gear, and it's also a good excuse to go to riding school, I think. Because none of us can, no matter how good we are or think we are, we can all improve, certainly.
It's fun. I take training every year, and I learn something new all the time, or take training from different trainers. You'll learn different things and different techniques and a different approach to adventure riding. But then it's just more fun to ride a BDR where you don't go, oh shit, all the time that, you see a technical terrain coming up. So preparation is definitely key to having a good, solid adventure on the BDR.
Let's take a short break for a few words from our sponsors. Picture this: you're in the garage, your favorite room in the house, and you're tuning up your engine with parts that you found on eBay. Every piece is just locking perfectly into place. You step back to admire your work, hands covered in grease. And because you're committed to riding that thing farther than the odometer can even handle, you start thinking to yourself, you know what? I could probably also use some new brakes, maybe a shock. This baby, it deserves a new air filter. So you head straight back to eBay. You can find any part you need there. It's unreal, from headlights to air filters to exhaust systems, all the way to those carbon fiber rims you've had in your mind. eBay is the stocked garage of your dreams. And you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit, because eBay knows DIY fixes can be major, and mods are always intense. So you need to know those parts are guaranteed to fit every time before you dive in wrench first. And on the off chance you order a part and it doesn't fit, send it back. Simple as that. You know what you love more than your bike itself, and that is, of course, riding it. You're serious when it comes to engine maintenance, and locked in when you're headed into a build. And that's exactly why you start with eBay. Minor fix or complete overhaul. You want to get your ride back on the road, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. So eBay created My Garage, where all you have to do is add your ride's info to get the exact parts that fit. When you see that green check, you're a click away from that part clicking perfectly into place. Well, now that you know this, just imagine standing at that open garage door, looking at the bike you love more than anything, knowing that anything is possible, whether it's keeping it on the road forever or turning it into something that's never been on the road before. Because with eBay, your garage just got a whole lot bigger. Get all the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. For 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger, Defend, and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design, with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing and D30 CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing. Now back to my conversation with Ina and Bryce. The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. Something that's come up perpetually, and now I don't live in the West Coast, but of course I follow the news in the West Coast, and maybe you can clarify something for me. Is there's been a lot of issues about restricting motorized vehicles on public lands, and I know that I've read a lot about the Western states, this being an issue. Does that affect you at all in any way? Has that affected you in choosing routes?
I can say that so far, no. We've read some articles and stories about things changing. We've also read about one recently in New York that's actually they're trying to open it to motorcycles. So I think the biggest threat right now is our threat to public lands and not just like an individual road being closed to motorcycles. For the most part, if they already are, I haven't seen it changing too much. But the public land issue is really big. You bring up the Western states. In Wyoming and in Utah right now, there are there's state level driven initiatives trying to say that the federal government was never supposed to have any of the land within the state. And so they're trying to, for example, in Wyoming, they're trying to take away all the public lands other than Yellowstone. For some reason, they have an exception, and turn those back into, well, I guess state lands. But then once they're at the state level, we worry that the states would be able to manage it like the federal government can. The federal government can work in a deficit. State lands can't, or state governments can't. And so the chances of parcels, big or small, being sold off at that point in time are much, much higher. So we hope that National Forests, BLM, any of the national public lands, we hope that the current administration or future administrations don't touch those and leave them status quo. Let us use them. We're used to them. It's one of the greatest values we have here in America. But I'd say that's the biggest threat right now.
I mean, I've followed a former motorcycle rider, a guy named Wes Seiler, writes about the Western states. He lives in, I think he lives in Billings or someplace like that. And but he's really articulated well in his Substack about the threats to what have historically been public lands. And I guess we encourage all our listeners to speak to their local representative if they feel that these public lands should remain public.
They should. If any federal agency or any governmental agency wants to touch our public lands, we should all be screaming. Doesn't matter how we use it. We could be hunting and fishing. We could be mountain biking and backpacking or riding motorcycles.
Yeah.
We should be all together on this. Our public lands should stay public.
Yeah, the public lands in the U.S. is something that our public, it's a unique gift and treasure that we all can share, regardless of our financial standing or, where we live. It's the treasure that we can all use and enjoy. And so, BDR is really at the forefront of making sure we understand what the issues are and working with our access and advocacy partners like the American Motorcycle Association, the Motorcycle Industry Council, to understand what's happening. And surely if, any of our routes or public lands are, under threat, that we would let our community know and galvanize the support to protect that.
Now, both of you obviously have extensive histories as motorcyclists, so let's reinforce your bona fides to our listeners by talking about what you've done. Now, Ina, you have done a lot of traveling by motorcycle before in fact, you came all the way from Russia, so you've been some traveling. How did you get involved in off-road motorcycling? And just give us a thumbnail sketch of some of the riding you've done, please.
Yes. So I was born and raised in Moscow, Russia. Came to the U.S. about 25 years ago. I was buzzing around Seattle on a scooter for many, many years before I had a car. And then I met a guy who was into motorcycles, and his dream was to go and ride in South America. And this was at the time when Ian and Charlie's Long Way Down movie came out, that I think it really jump-started our industry and our community. So we decided to quit our jobs and researched the routes. Mainly at that time, it was the ADV Rider Forum. So we sublet our apartment, bought two new KLRs in 2008, and started our journey from Seattle to Ushuaia, which is at the very top of South America in Argentina, and had an amazing experience, that changed our lives really. And came back to Seattle. Thankfully, there were already a number of companies in the adventure space, and I got a job at TourTech. And then eventually they needed somebody to help run the BDR organization. I had some experience working for a nonprofit in Seattle in prior years. And so, this job was just a perfect opportunity to combine my passion for adventure riding and my experience in the nonprofit sector. So I've been with the BDR for 12 years now. And for the first 8 years, I was the only employee. We were in the loft of TourTech. I don't like looking back now. It's really incredible to me that we did that for so long with just one part-time employee.
Right.
So yeah, the rest is history. But it's been really a privilege of a lifetime to be able to serve the adventure community and work with our board and just all the amazing volunteers that help run the BDR.
And Bryce?
I, like a lot of people, I started riding motorcycles when I was a kid on a little Honda 50, and third grade, I think, was the first bike I got, and just started moving up. Next level Honda.
Right.
But then I went off to college and got married and had kids and all that stuff. I didn't have bikes from the time I probably finished high school until I think I was 40 something. Somewhere in there. In 2006, I did a trip to Baja with some friends on adventure bikes, and it just kind of changed my world again. I mean, it just brought back how much I love motorcycles and adventure, and more specifically, the technical, harder riding. I'm not really drawn to street riding, but yeah, that just kind of set my head back to where I was when I was a kid, I guess. And then the BDR thing just came along. When I made the Washington one, and I told you about before, that dominoes started falling to get BDR rolling, and it's just been one route after the other since then, and a lot of riding. It's such a passion for me. I both the making of the routes thing. I'm a map guy. I just think like maps are made. It's just I have this connection with maps, and then
I think the background in your room gives that away.
Right. And to get to see them, it's one thing to see them virtually and to plan them, but when you go out and see them and turn this into a gem, when you're done with it, it's that whole full process from beginning to end is what I live and love. It's just amazing.
Now I'm going to ask for a couple of personal recommendations. Obviously, both of you have ridden much of the BDR route, and do you let's start with you. Do you have a particular section or a state that you've ridden in that really resonates with you?
I'd have to say Northern California route is probably one of my favorites. It's just so varied. There's no dull sections. Sometimes on the BDR, like in order to cross to good riding, there's a little bit of just kind of flat boring section or whatever, but NorCal is just so stunning. The typography changes, the terrain changes, weather changes, and it's just so beautiful, and it's just so fun to ride. So, and it has a number of advanced sections, harder sections that are just off the top in terms of the epic flavor of it. So I would say NorCal is probably my favorite route. Now, I have not ridden Colorado, which is on my bucket list. And all the high elevation mountains and passes there, I think, are stunning. Wyoming was also one of my favorite routes. It's probably the most remote of all the BDRs, and we had a lot of fun on that one. Southern California too. It scares a lot of people because it's sandy. But the scenery is just incredible. So I would say those are probably my 3 top routes.
And if you can master sand,
after if you ride the California, at the end of it, you will be a master of sand.
Sand teaches you everything that you need to know. which is to stay loose and momentum and weight transfer. And yeah, sand is, I actually love riding in sand. I love it. As soon as I make a mistake, you're down.
But then it's like, it doesn't hurt as much as you falling
Oh,
off.
no, exactly.
I say in general, just like if you complete a whole BDR, you will be a changed person, because not only, you've accomplished something hard, but all the camaraderie with your friends, it's just the memories that you have. You can't explain it to people until they ride it. And then you have this common experience that is just, it's really, these are experiences of a lifetime on our public lands. You don't have to go and ride in South America, to experience that. So I really encourage everyone, like, if you have a few days, ride even a portion of the BDR, because you will learn so much about yourself, about you as a rider. You will push yourself, you'll get through some challenges, and adversity. Really, adventure is adversity. If you look back, it's the most hard moments on the BDR, when you broke down, or when you were helping your friend fix a flat tires, is what you look back to as the most fun, and memorable experiences. And I have to say, I get emails from our community, and I love the ones that come from like older gentlemen, where he says, I'm 80, my friend is 85, and the other one is 75, and we rode the Mid-Atlantic BDR, and we had an adventure of a lifetime. And to myself, I think, wow, these guys had a whole life, lived so many years, and BDR is one of the highlights of their life. Like, that's just incredible. Or we have groups where it's like a dad, a son, and a grandfather. So 3 generations of guys riding together and having that experience. And there's just really very few things in life that are better than riding a BDR, in my opinion.
And Bryce, is there a particular section or state that you that resonates with you?
I like the mountain states. Some people like desert riding, and I'll just say Michael Blecky, who I mentioned before to you before we got on air here. Michael is my cohort that I work with day in and day out. That guy's a desert guy. He's from Arizona. He loves sand. He loves the high desert, the Colorado Plateau, and all of the sandy 2-track that you'll find out there, rocks, lava rocks. He loves that stuff. I tend to like the forests and the mountains. I'm from the Pacific Northwest. It's what I know the most. And I love the stickiness of the roads, and it's what my skill set is. I can rip in the mountains. And for me, it's the greatest thing in the world. So is there a favorite? People ask me this many times, and I always go to Utah. Utah's probably my favorite. That was the second route that I made. And it's talk about diversity, man. You've got these mountain ranges like the La Salles and the Bajos and the Monte Cristos in the north. And then you have the sand, and you have the mesas and things that you go through in the areas, south of Moab and around Moab. There's just so much. It's just so cool. Ina touched on Colorado. Those high passes are mind blowing. Absolutely epic. I mean, epic capital letters. It's so fun. But I'd say anything in the West and the Rockies are probably my favorites. On the East Coast, I've only ridden the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic. Loved them both. I haven't done Northeast yet. I need to get over there to do that. It's just not. It's super fun. It's just not my flavor. My favorite things are these Cascades and Rockies forests. So Washington's my baby. That's the one I started with, and that's the one I work on the most. Actually, that's one that we're going to be reissuing here soon with substantial changes. 9 different changes to this route are going to be released as a 15-year anniversary of that route.
Right.
So we try to keep riding these. We keep improving them. They keep getting better. If somebody waits 10 or 15 years to ride, like for example, Idaho is another one that we're making major updates to, and that's one of our most popular routes. I guarantee when we release this new one, people are going to say, "Hey, that's a perfect reason to go ride that again," and they'll have another unique experience on it.
Well, to wrap things up, let's just say that you've gone on a BDR route, and you are a registered charity. And if I wanted to give back as a way to say thank you to all of the workers and volunteers that you have, is there a way that I could donate?
Yes, absolutely. 85% of BDR funding comes from individual riders like you, Neil, and all the people who download free GPS tracks and use our resources and go out there and have adventures of a lifetime on the BDRs. If you want to give back, there's a number of ways you can do it. We're 501c3 nonprofit, so any straight donation you make to the BDR is a tax deductible. We also have a number of fundraising initiatives throughout the year. One of the biggest ones is our annual bike sweepstakes, where you buy tickets and you have a chance to win a BDR outfitted, BDR ready commemorative bike. So that's one. We have a holiday auction every December where we get donations from our industry partners and also create these unique packages where, maybe there's an opportunity to ride with a BDR board member or be a cast on one of our upcoming filming expeditions. We also have an annual fundraiser ride. It's a weekend where we find a really cool place somewhere in the country. We just came back last week from our fundraiser in Smoky Mountains. So, we had 100 people come and ride with us during the weekend. And then in the evenings, we do roundtable discussions and presentation about what BDR is up to and kind of get a pulse from our community of what they want us to do in the future. So, those are some of the opportunities to support BDR, not just through a donation, but also our annual supporter program is another one where for a certain donation level, you also get discounts and promotional opportunities and giveaways from over 40 adventure brands. So if you are looking to outfit yourself or your bike for a BDR adventure, the annual supporter program is probably the best way to support BDR, but then also get something in return to help you have a successful adventure in the backcountry. So I would definitely encourage everyone to support BDR, even if it's, any donation helps. When you download the tracks, there's a little pop-up that comes up, we're nonprofit, please support us. $5, $20, whatever you can. Not only you're helping yourself have a great adventure in the backcountry and use all the resources we provide, but you're also helping other people who may not be, in the position to support BDR financially to have these experiences. So it's really a community effort between the industry and the riders and our ambassadors and volunteers. We cannot do it. Our staff is only five people between our staff members in the office and a couple of contractors. It's a very, very small team, but it's really a huge community effort. So if you're enjoying what BDR is doing or you're planning to ride a BDR, I do encourage you to support the nonprofit.
And I think it's also worth making the distinction, because when you go to your website, you see all these corporate logos, which kind of visually makes you think that it's being paid for by all these corporations. And as motorcyclists, we typically want other people to pay for the stuff that we love doing. But you said 85% comes from us, which I think is great, because it means when the corporations go away, which they always do, into something else, eventually it means it's ours to keep going, right?
Right.
Yeah. Especially now in 2020 we had our biggest year during COVID, and the industry was growing and sales were going through the roof. People were buying new bikes and apparel. So now, with tariffs and kind of the uncertainty in the economy, we're seeing that our industry partners are being very, very conservative. At this point, they're kind of in survival mode. And so they're not as generous as they have been before, where they were growing. And so in order for us to accomplish our goal of, doubling the number of routes in the next 5 years for our riders, it's really the individual donors and that we look to help us achieve that.
Yeah. Neil, one other thing I'd like to add is, and Ina touched on it briefly, is the number of volunteers that we have in this organization. Our board, 9 members, they're almost all just volunteer. They've been with us for a long period of time. They give us a lot of time and know-how. They're very smart people who care about BDR and care about the adventure riding community. We have about 50 ambassadors that are equally important to this organization because they do different things for us. They connect us at events. They connect us to the community in other ways. They help me with scouting and route development in many ways. And then beyond the ambassadors, we have all these other volunteers that are unsung heroes that, they don't, nobody knows that they're out there doing this. They do this out of the goodness of their hearts. And we're talking about, 100 extra volunteers we probably have all over North America as we get into the riding season right now. They're all gearing up and emailing me, hey, send me the latest tracks, and they're scouting things for me and sending me reports. And
right.
I mean, it's incredible what we accomplish with all of the volunteers that are very close to the organization and who reach out to us and then wind up being connected to us through everything else, the riding and the events and things. So we couldn't do it without them.
In closing words from eBay Motors, picture this: you're halfway through a DIY motorcycle fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. Well, it's okay, because whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brake rotors, lights, and tire exhaust systems, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Thank you for listening to The Lowdown Show.